Good morning, FEC Algebra 1 students. Once again, we are out of school because of weather that's probably not really that bad, but just enough of an annoyance to close schools. So I am going to send you this video, and I am going to, as long as we have closures, I will be making videos for the Algebra 1 class because I want to be using the same language throughout. So if you recall, the other day we started a new chapter, and this was on systems of linear equations. So in our systems of linear equations, remember, we have two lines that are graphed onto our graph. We find where they intersect, and that is our goal in life, to find that point of intersection. And if you see right there, it's pointing out that 2, 5 is the point of intersection. Let's just do a quick review on how we get those lines on the graph. You should be pretty good at this by now, but let's just review. So here are our two equations. We have to put those on our graph, and so the first one is y equals 2x plus 1. What is the y-intercept? That would be 1. So our first point is 0, 1. Then once we get that on the graph, we can find our slope. So if you take a look again at our graph here, here is the point 0, 1. Then what you have to do is you are going to move over 1, up 2, over 1, up 2, and you're going to be able to create that line. Remember, 2 points make a line. Then we're going to do the same thing with the next line, y equals negative x plus 7. Our y-intercept is 7, so we find the point 0, 7 on the graph, which they have already done for us. It's up here, 0, 7. Then our slope is negative 1, or negative 1 over 1. So we have to move to the left. So here's our point. We move over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1, and we come up with points and draw our line. The very next thing that we have to do is just find where it intersects. This is a nice clean intersection. It intersects perfectly at 2, 5. But sometimes if our point is way off the graph, we may not be able to find it as easily, and that's where another method might be helpful. And so our first way to find that point of intersection is putting both lines on the graph. The second method is what we're going to move into in just a minute. But let me make a comment about this site. It's called MathBits Notebook, and it actually gives a nice breakdown of the methods that we use for the different ways to find the point of intersection. So I've included that on the email that I've sent to you. But just remember, first method, there's lots of methods. Our first method is to find the point of intersection on the graph. The second method, and I want you to go ahead and turn in your books to lesson 7.2. And that is on page 396. So make sure that you are on the page that says Solving Linear Systems by Substitution. This is going to be a second method, a second way to find where that point of intersection is. So let's say that your graph is way off or your lines are way off the graph where they intersect. Or perhaps it's a fractional answer and it's harder to read. So we are going to work this, and I'm going to work this on my nice little whiteboard that I just put here. If you look at example number 1, it gives you two equations. And those two equations are negative x plus y and I'm sorry this is not very neat. I'm going to do the best I can. And the second one is 2x plus y equals -2. There's the two equations from the example 1 on page 396. Now, we could probably put both of those on the graph, but remember, we're learning other methods. So what we want to be able to do is to come up with a way to substitute something in. So if you look ahead to number 2, what they are going to do is they are going to change one of these equations a little bit so that we can isolate the y all by itself. So let's change this one. We're going to move the x over so that we have on the other side y, or we will have y equals x plus 1. So now I've changed it so that the x is just positive, and I have y equals x plus 1. Now what I want to do in the second equation, the 2x plus y equals -2, what I want to do is every time I have a y, I'm going to substitute in that right there. So every time I have a y, I'm going to have 2x plus y. What did I say y equaled? Y equals x plus 1. I'm going to stick in x plus 1 right here. Now I know you're probably sitting there going, what in the world is she doing? But just hang with me. We have found the value of y to be x plus 1. So every time I have a y, I am just going to stick it right in there. So there's that x plus 1, and then equals -2. Now, earlier in the year, we had to make sure that we grouped all of our x's together, all of our y's together, and all of our whole numbers together. So we want to do that. Here I have a 2x and I have an x. We're going to put them together, and we're going to say that 3x plus the 1, because we still have the 1 there, equals -2. And then I'm going to subtract the 1, and now I have 3x equals -3. Just basic old algebra. There's 3x equals -3. I divide by the 3, I divide by the 3, and I end up with x, put it up here, equals -1. Wonderful. I found the value of x. What am I looking for? I'm looking for the point of intersection between these two lines right there. I haven't found the whole point, but I did find the x. So I'm going to put my x up here. My x is -1. So there's my x. I still have to find y. And how do you think I'm going to find y? I am going to find y by substituting it back in, substituting the -1 back into the original equation. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to do 2 times -1 plus y equals -2. And I'm sorry, I'm running into myself over here. So 2 times the -1, that's what we found the x to be, plus y equals -2. So now I have -2 plus y equals -2. I add 2 here, and I'm going to be left with y equals 0 because these cancel each other out. Now I know that my other point is 0. So there is the point of intersection. Just like I found the point of intersection over here, let me get back to my website. There's a point of intersection. Here's the point of intersection on the second one that we did. It's called substitution because what I want to do is I want to substitute a value in for y and then plug it back in. Let's do this again. And what I need to do is erase my board and then we will start all over. So just hold on 1 second and review the second problem while I am getting ready. All right, let's take a look at example number 2. And it just says solve the linear system. And we are going to, you can write, why don't you write this along with me so that you're following along. We have 2x plus 2y equals 3. Then we have the second equation. Remember, we're always going to have two equations. X minus 4y equals -1. Now, remember, we could put these on a graph. You know, we could pop out some graph paper. That may actually be your favorite method. And when we get further down the road, you'll be able to choose the method that you want to use to find your point of intersection. What do we want to find? We want to find a value for x and a value for y, right there, where those two lines cross. And so we're going to try a different method. We're not going to graph, but you can graph to check. So what we want to do is we want to be able to substitute something in. Substitution just means that something else steps in for that original equation or that original value. So what we want to do is there's a couple things, little clue things that you want to do. First, you want to look for the equation that is going to be the least troublesome to work with. We want to get an x or a y by itself because we want to have a value for that. So if I look at this in the first equation, 2x plus 2y equals 3, I would have to deal with the 2 on both the x and the y. That one's not an easy one to use for substitution. So let's look at the second one, and I see that the x here is all by itself already. So I don't have to do a whole lot of work to get that x by itself. What do I want to do? I want the x or the y all by itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the 4 here, add 4y. That way it cancels out there, and I'm going to add the 4y over here. Now I'm left with x equals 4y minus 1. What is the value of x? The value of x is 4y minus 1. So now I go back to my other equation. What was that other equation? 2x plus 2y equals 3. So now every time I see x in this equation, right there we are, I have to put in 4y minus 1. So let's do that. So we're going to come over here and we're going to have 2. What does x equal? 4y minus 1. So I'm just going to put 4y minus 1 plus 2y and equals 3. Okay, 4y, because there's the 2 in parentheses. What does x equal? 4y minus 1. 2x, 2 times the value of x right there, plus 2y equals 3. So now I just go through and I do my algebra. 2 distributive, 2 times 4y, 8y. 2 times -1 minus 2 plus 2y equals 3. Now I'm going to put all my like terms together, and I'm going to have 10y minus 2 equals 3. Add the 2, add the 2, and I have 10y equals 5. When, let me pop up here, 10y equals 5. When I divide by the 10 and divide by the 10, I'm left with 1/2. This is one of those times where you're going to get a fractional answer. So 1/2 is what my y equals. I come back up here and I'm going to put in 1/2. Then what I have to do is take that 1/2 value and plug it back in. And let me get a clean whiteboard here for us. We'll keep our original equations up here just so that you can see those. All right. All right, so we found our y, 1/2. So now what I want to do is I want to take that and I want to plug it back into one of these original equations. Let's just do the top one. So 2x plus 2, and then we set our y was 1/2. Put that in there. Equals 3. And then I'm going to have 2x plus 2 times 1/2, which ends up being 1. I'm going to subtract 1, and I'm left with 2x equals 2, or x equals 1. Now I come up here, and I put my 1 in, and I have found my point of intersection, 1/1/2. We've got a fractional answer. This is probably the easier way to try to figure out that point of intersection. All right, what I want you to do is to try the checkpoints, and you are going to, I just want to make sure I have the answers to give those to you. So try the checkpoints, and I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. If you want to turn the video off, you can come back on, and then I will tell you what the answers are. So take a second to work on those. And what is it's telling you to solve for one or the other. So in the first one, you're going to solve for y. In the second one, you're going to solve for x. And in the third one, you're going to solve for x. So go ahead and do those. And you also have to decide which equation is going to be the easiest to solve for. And I believe that that would probably be in the first one. If you're having trouble trying to figure this out, solve for y in the first equation. But when you're doing that, you will also have to change your y to a positive. So don't forget to do that. So the value, what you're looking for in number 1, y equals 3x plus 9. So y equals 3x plus 9. That's the answer that you want, because it just says solve for y, and it's 3x plus 9. That's what you would substitute in. All right, now try the second one. And it says to solve for x in the first equation. So go ahead and solve for the x in the first equation. So it involves moving the x or y. And so what you're going to get is x equals negative 3y minus 11. That's what you would substitute in. Now do the last one. And the last one, you're going to solve for x in the first equation. And it should be x equals 3y plus 0. X equals 3y plus 0. Now what I want you to try to do is I want you to pop over to page 399. And I want you to take a look at the guided practice number 7, 8, and 9. It says use substitution to solve the linear system. What does it mean to solve a linear system? It means to find the point of intersection. So you want to find a point of intersection. You want to find an x and a y. So in the first one, 3x plus y equals 3. 7x plus 2y equals 1, you need to find an x and y where those two intersect. I suggest that you look at the first equation and that you move the 3x to the other side so that y equals negative 3x plus 3. And that's what you're going to substitute in. So take a few minutes to do that. Pause the video. I want you to do 7, 8, and 9, and then when you come back, when you turn it back on, I'll have the answers for you. So go ahead and do that. So for 7, the answer is negative 5, 18. For 8, the answer is 1, 2. X equals 1, y equals 2. For number 9, x equals 1, y equals 3. So keep playing around with these. Try the homework. I am going to provide a second video that will have a couple more examples. So if you're still struggling, watch the second video. And if you're not, then you can just ignore that one. So let me know if you have questions.